Spread the Fire, welcome back to SMWX, and we are continuing our conversation with former President of the ANC and of the Republic of South Africa, Jacob Zuma. Baba, thanks so much. We've been talking about the historical context of how the dots that you were joining at the commission came to be, and the conspiracy that you shared with the public about removing you from office. And I wanted to move away from history
okay.
and move to some more current issues, which I think many South Africans would love to hear your views on. And I'd like to first go to your removal from the presidency of the Republic now. We haven't heard a lot actually from you since then. And I wanted to know from you what that moment was like and how the ANC communicated that to you and what reasons they gave to you for removing you or recalling you from office before your term had come to an end. Can you take us behind the scenes of what that moment that made everyone talk in our country was like for you specifically?
Well, firstly, you will appreciate that with me knowing this background, many things that have happened in the ANC as well as in government, I was looking at them with that background in mind.
Yeah.
For an example, the link that was made of the arms deal with me when I was far away from it, the kind of activities and the information that moved around of trying to say, let us get Zuma out of the leadership. We take him back to his village, we'll look after him. Firstly, it was information. Later, it was confirmed by somebody who was telling me what had happened, linking the the investigations against me, but also what was happening in an attempt to make me not to become part of the leadership of the ANC after or in Polokwane conference of the ANC. The information came, linking the dots. This continued. I was charged. About 2 judges dismissed the case against me, but in a sense, the NPA brought the case, insisted that the case continues. As I said, Judge Msimang said there was no case. I think Judge Nicholson put the finger on the pulse there very correctly, because he said this case was political. But nevertheless, it insisted until we got information that in fact, which is today, of course, known as the spy tapes, which exposed the connivance between the investigators, the police, the prosecutions, and politicians. Those tapes are now the public thing.
Absolutely.
That then began to show that that kind of plan was being executed, implemented as we went. And therefore, the issue of Zuma being taken away from the leadership continued. What I thought was important for me to present as I was in the commission was that this plan has been continuing, it never stopped. And then finally, the issue came from as I was about to conclude my term of office.
Yes.
Again, as you know, the National Executive Committee of the ANC finally took the decision that I should be persuaded to resign. The whole story of Zuma must go,
Yeah,
etc.
I saw your nice Twitter video.
Because the huge mobilization was done to say Zuma must go. What is interesting is that just before the NEC finally took that decision, a kind of orchestrated view on this case, for an example, within the ANC, you had a group calling itself 100 something of people who were coming together. This talwa is being pushed together. To me, that kind of a plan came back to say, even from the position of chief of intelligence, it was the ANC structure that took the decision.
In 1991, it was the same almost as in
Exactly,
2008.
exactly. Which then meant to me, those people still exist. Perhaps with time, they might be more stronger.
What I find fascinating is in 91, when you're removed, President Ramaphosa is put in place, and the same thing happens in 2018. But that's just me connecting dots. I'm not. I think what is also interesting about this period is the way in which the media seems to criticize some, and when others do exactly the same thing, they're praised. And I'm looking now, particularly in relation to the public protector, who had a lot of criticism for you, the former public protector in her time, and there was a huge case about how the remedial action of the public protector has to be binding. And I'm suddenly looking around, and there's a new case with a new public protector who's issued remedial actions, but all of a sudden it's no longer considered absolutely necessary to pursue, and Minister Gordhan, for example, now, and President Ramaphosa has joined him, are opposing implementing the remedial action. And there doesn't seem to be much criticism of those decisions. Do you feel as though there's a double standard? Is the double standard that I've identified a real one, or am I taking it too far?
It is an interesting thing because using the same institutions, what has become clear is that when it comes to Jacob Zuma, these measures must be implemented as they are. The remedial action, that it is binding, it became very prominent when it came to Zuma. Now that there are different individuals, that emphasis is no longer there. In fact, it looks like there is something wrong with the current public protector. When the public protector, before this one, was taking these kind of decisions against Zuma, it had to be implemented now. Now it changes.
Yeah.
It tells you, therefore, that the plan that I'm talking about and the conspiracy continues. That in itself, I'm sure people forget very easily, that it is clear that, therefore, the plan against this particular individual must continue. I think, as I was given the background,
Yes.
I'm sure people who care to know, they would see how it goes. Double standards, the law to other people must work in a particular way, to others it must work in a different way. That's when then you begin to have a problem. How are we running the affairs of our country? Should we have those who must be dealt with in a particular way? Under the same circumstances, others must be dealt with differently. I think that's a problem that our country is facing. And if, as I was saying, that many things that have come, courts have been used, the political powers have been used against me, you reach a point where I had to resign as the president of the republic. Again, the whole background comes to the fore. Even when I'm outside, that's why I was saying to the commission, to me, the commission is another event that enhances this narrative about Zuma. And I'm sure the current state of the commission itself and my complaints and the manner in which this is being dealt with comes back to the same process that I'm talking about, of a conspiracy. I went into some details, and one time when I was talking about the state capture, I'm sure people without having the background of this would not understand. How would you create a commission which is a commission to deal with corruption, but call it a state capture? That some people have captured the state. And what I said, for an example, about then the public protector, who used very well-crafted expressions, secured in comfort. You added in comfort that does not exist in order to enhance the narrative against this particular individual called Zuma. Because the members of parliament and political parties went to Nkandla, there was no amphitheater, but it had been put there. So everything, you have Judge Squires making a judgment, not talking about a generally corrupt relationship between Zuma and Shabir Sheikh, but people create it until the judge comes out to say, sorry, this thing I never uttered this kind of words. But people had found a way to weave it in, because this character must be dealt with. And therefore it is an interesting, even now, interesting situation, as it were.
And I wanted to ask, and come to the commission, because I think this is a really important moment in our country's history, especially your testimony and some of the things you've revealed for the first time. Let's assume state capture happened in the worst way that everybody says it happened, state capture. There's one thing I don't understand. How could it be possible that only President Zuma knew about these things, but the people that served in the cabinet, the deputy president, the minister of finance, had absolutely no knowledge? It seems to me that the current narrative is that you knew all these terrible things that were happening, but the people who served around you somehow had absolutely no knowledge of any wrongdoing, and have actually gone to the commission and said, we didn't know. There's no way we could have ever known this. It just doesn't add up to me. Do you think that there's a particular agenda to put scrutiny on you and not to put scrutiny on the people who served with you for any political reasons?
Well, it's difficult to give a view and then say people they knew when they did not know, etc. That's why I'm saying when it happens, you then say, that's why I ask a question. Why do you have a plan hashed outside, away, but get implemented by the organization? But of course, the people are very clear because if you take where they say, after this conference, Zuma must be out. What is the link? That indeed, after the conference, Zuma is out. And that's why we leave it. We'd say we don't want to get into the details. You have a commission of inquiry on the state capture coming in the manner in which it did. There was quite something because the public protector before this one was on his way out. But the manner in which this particular report was worked on was rushed. It was clear that that public protector had to leave this one being put in place. Firstly, she can't do it, there is no money. Suddenly the money comes immediately to facilitate that. And of course, at the end, the commission, normally, if there is a recommendation that there must be a commission of inquiry, once that recommendation is done, the matters are left with the president to establish the commission. But by the time we got there, somehow in the process, some things that developed to empower the public protector's recommendations to be the remedial actions or whatever we call it, to be binding. And nobody remembers very well when this was done, but it is there now. And therefore, once the public protector takes the decisions, they are binding. But of course, as you see, they're binding to others, they have to be looked at differently. What then you end up with is a situation of a carefully worked out commission. That the commission must not be established by the president as provided in the constitution, but the public protector must almost give like the order of court that the Chief Justice must take some powers in terms of identifying the judge who must head this commission, which is basically the right of the president. And I indicated this because it is odd. It's not like a normal thing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't want to guess. But I don't know whether there will be questions. But I thought that it was important for me to say there are people, even if they are faceless for now, but there are people behind which are utilized by those kind of organizations.
To this day. To
this day. They utilize it to remove me as early as Chief of Intelligence. I think they've been also utilized in the growing cry that Zuma must go. Finally, the decision taken by the National Executive Committee. What is behind this? I mean, you would have expected that if Zuma had done something wrong, the proper authority would sit down and say, look, what are you doing? but it comes the other way around. There are a number of things that happened, and I just thought people should know. This is what has happened ever since, perhaps ever since the coming in of the democratic government. There has been something working against.
Are there any people on that list that you know that are in senior positions or have been in senior positions in the South African government?
Well, that's a matter of a complex issue. If I worked as an intelligent officer at some point, I should normally have knowledge of a number of things. But it's a matter that is always handled very carefully, and I have been, over the period, not handling emotionally. As an issue which remains quite something complex.
But you haven't lost the list. The list, you still have it in your possession.
Well, it's a question of knowledge there. You have information, you get to know things.
Yeah.
So it's a matter that I'm sure one of the things that it should be the ANC should take interest, I think.
Do you think the ANC will take interest? Because it just seems to me that people haven't realized how serious these revelations are. And do you have any hope that the ANC will actually pursue some of the claims that you have made?
I'm sure the ANC should, because I would prefer that the ANC perhaps deal with the issue, because that's an issue that affects the ANC. I hope the ANC will look into this. There have been things, for an example, there have been allegations made. I think the ANC should take interest because it's about the ANC, really. I hope it will. I hope it will.
So as we come towards the end of our discussion, I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, whether you have any regrets about your period in the presidency.
Not at all. I don't have any regrets. I think when I was given the opportunity to lead the ANC as well as the country, and I think I tried my best to do what I did. But it has been very difficult, knowing the kind of things I got to know in my life. I think I've tried my best, and I don't have any regrets.
Are you confident that the current leadership of the ANC is truly in control of the party?
That's a difficult question, because it's always how the leadership itself understood. I think we have a leadership, I think, of the ANC elected in the conferences. One would always hope that the leadership of the ANC should do the right things.
You spent 10 years on Robben Island, roughly 10 years as President of South Africa. Any indication as to what we can expect over the next 10 years?
Well, I wouldn't want to make any speculation. Because if the issues that I've just flagged are not addressed, then it's difficult to give a clear answer to that question.
So you might be doing more than just Twitter stories.
I hope and really hope the ANC could look into the matters that I've raised. Very important that we should do so.
And if the ANC fails to do so, it may be an interesting 10 years ahead.
It may be interesting 10 years. Absolutely.
Well, Baba, you've been so generous with your time. Thank you for your contributions to the struggle, for your contributions to the country, but also for trusting a new youth-led media platform to share your side of the story. It's been
Thank you very much.
a true honor and a privilege. And we still look forward to further Twitter engagements.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I hear you. Thanks for watching the content. Like, share and subscribe on all platforms. smwx.co.za to join the WhatsApp channel. And let's build a new conversation for a new generation. I hear you.